Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the BBBN Podcast. Today, we'll be looking at this was episode 12, right? I'm not tripping. This is episode 12, I believe. Yeah, doing a review of that, and just sort of talking about the fights. And you all know the drill by now. Putting this into the ranking after every single fight, and you could already see a little some changes of what I did, but we'll talk about that later. Just make sure that you like and subscribe. That would be pretty cool of you to do. And yeah, comment on the video, tell me how bad my rankings are. I know they're terrible. Like all about personal opinion and all about that. What is this? I don't want you. All right, cool. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start off with the first fight. If I remember correctly, I went in my predictions, I went 5-2. If I remember correctly. No, I went 4-3. Hold up. Do I have my predictions there? Yeah, 4-3. Malice, Doomba, Mad Catter, Hypershock, Big Dill, Sawblaze. Yeah, so not the best week, in all honesty, but we're gonna get into our first fight, which was Mad Catter Lockjaw, and I do think some of the context is being lost on this fight of how close this fight was for me. I believe they were 15 and 16, where they were in my rankings previously. Mad Catter was slightly above Lockjaw, but this was a fight of both robots during the season have shown a lot of power in their weapon. Mad Catter, you look at the Whiplash fight, and then Big Dill fight, it showed a lot of resiliency. That was a great back and forth fight. But that showed a lot of power. Lockjaw showed a lot of power in the Malice fight, and it was just sort of a battle of which one could end up being more reliable, and then you can say previously Lockjaw hadn't had the best reliability in previous seasons. Everyone makes jokes about how Lockjaw's reliability and how it smokes a lot. Like, this Lockjaw's a smoker, smoking poof poof, smoking the BBBN pack. But this was a very strong tale of of minutes, because I feel like Mad Catter did a great job. There were sports where both robots were getting great hits, and both robots convinced me that they were winning this fight, especially early on. Mad Catter was getting a lot of damage onto the forks and doing a lot of good job against Lockjaw, that I was look, that's a lot of damage. That's good for Mad Catter. He's going to be able to keep up the pace. Lockjaw was able to get to the side. Lockjaw was then started being able to dish out damage and kept on dishing out more damage. And it literally ended up almost last second, barely Mad Catter gets counted out here. And props to Mad Catter for lasting that long. Ultimately, they did lose in the last second, which is nuts and bonkers. But honestly, this season has been giving us banger first fights. BattleBots knows how to always lead off their episodes, and this was also a banger first fight. Now, when it comes to ranking these robots, I believe I had both of these robots as locks going into the season, going into this fight. So really what this was mattering was positioning in the end, when it comes to the tournament. I do think, now that Lockjaw's 2-2, I think Lockjaw makes it in. Destroyed Whiplash, had a good competitive fight against Big Dill and Lockjaw, for that matter. Its only blowout loss was to Riptide, and Riptide's been number 2 right now. So if you lose to a top 5 robot, then hey, tough going for you. I do see it going in the mid to low 20s, and I feel like my positioning is going to reflect that. For now, I'm gonna put this under Death Roll, below and above Scorpios, mainly because I'm not I feel like after some of these fights, Banshee, Whiplash, we'll see how some of these like fights play out with these lower seeds that are 1 and 2. It'll definitely go down because its season is over and there's still a ton more movement left for them for other robots to move up, to move below it, etc. I think 20 is a decent spot, and I do see it ending up in like the 24 to 17 range. I feel like that's a pretty safe range for it to go because all in all it's a decently impressive 2 and 2. When it comes to Lockjaw, definitely look at top 15 and above. Honestly, I don't see it going any lower. If it somehow goes any lower, I would be I would be confused if we had a lot of 2 and 2 teams. If we had a lot of 2 and 2 teams, then if I see it below top 15, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense in my mind. Because when you look at this, you have a dominating fight against Lockjaw, like a dominating fight against Glitch, like an okay loss against Sawblaze, in retrospect, and then a good win against Mad Catter. So I think for now, obviously this is gonna move by the end of the podcast, but I'm gonna put it at 11, and then it'll probably move. There's gonna be some movement here because Lucky's now 3-0. Claw Viper's 3-1. We'll get to that. There's some interesting talks about this that went on during this season, during this episode. Oh my word. But next we go on to Malice and Gruff. Now, the first thing I want to address is that going into this, even though Malice was 2-1, I think the show did a great job of saying this. Malice was very much on the bubble. You look at its resume before. Let's do a little experiment here. Before going into the fight, you had a 2-1 Lockjaw. Record is good. Record is solid. Record doesn't tell you the entire story. Obviously, we all know it got its teeth kicked in by Lockjaw, and then we all know that the reason why Malice won that fight was Emulsifier just dying. We all know that, and I think the show is putting more emphasis on, it initially lost the fight to Valkyrie. I feel like that fight, I don't think that fight is as close as what like production and like the show wants us to believe. I feel like that was a strong Malice fight for a majority of it. And I mean, I think the main reason why they lost was just because of the fact that like judges didn't have full perspective of it, and also they didn't see the full weapon spin up. You like us viewers, we have so many viewing angles that we can't look at a match in one fixed spot. Like we can't do that. But still necessarily on the bubble, because this win feels like a loss because Emulsifier was doing a great job of destroying Malice. So going into this fight, if it's 2-2, it ends up in this weird like stage of maybe it gets like as high as 30, but it's gonna end up like in a range of like 30 to 40, especially with how like competitive some of these robots could end up being. Next, and then you have Gruff, who's 1 and 2, needs to put on a good performance, but also doesn't have the best track record against horizontals. You think about the Tombstone fight, it got its teeth kicked in there. It lost in the Bloodsport fight when Bloodsport lost its weapon. Like, it's not a great, like, realistically, even though this is a wedge, it was still a great matchup for Malice. Going into the fight, I expected as much, honestly. There wasn't a lot of like big flashy hits where both robots get sent into like the opposite sides of the arena, but there were some like frame bending and frame shifting hits. That first like big hit Malice got, like, it got in a lot of great sparks too. Like that, like in the first part of the fight was Malice getting a lot of great sparks, and then that first big hit, like you can really see the frame bend up on that. Like it wasn't extremely like big, but if you had a minute eye, you could pick it out, and like when you saw it, and that's like big, huge, like huge hit, and then I'm like, oh, they lost the one side. If they get another hit like that after that one, then Malice's Gruff is done. And in like about 15-20 seconds, that hit happens, and then the rest of Gruff is done. And I go, okay, cool. I have the utter confidence that Malice locks themselves into a spot. Like, it's very good confidence in that. Now, when it comes to rankings, it's weird because I feel like I want to rank this as a 2-2 bot. Right? Because Emulsifier, like, it didn't win because it destroyed Emulsifier. It won because Emulsifier stopped working and it could still drive. Which, I mean, it might be hard to distinguish. I am going to put it above Jackpot, at least. For now, I'm going to put it at 22. Realistically, I think Malice ends up between, like, this 24 and 28. Like, that's a small margin. Actually, it might be, like, 22 through 28. Because it's 3-1. I desperately think that these, like, lower spots are going to be the robots that barely eke it in. As for Gruff, I mean, I don't have great confidence that it can make it into the tournament, realistically. Ripperoni's an okay win, but, like, all the other fights, it got its teeth kicked in. Like, which is funny because Gruff, like, in earlier seasons definitely had that teeth aesthetic going on. I'm gonna put Gruff at 44, and I think it's out. I think there's no shot it can get into the tournament. A lot of things have to go. Like, I would give it a 0.01% or something like that. A point something percent chance of getting it in. A lot needs to go right in order for it to win, or even get in, or even to be considered. There's a lot of robots that I would consider that would potentially go 1 and 3 that I would say, oh yes, we need to put this in over Gruff. And one of them fought today, so this episode. So I'm gonna touch on Dragon King Doomba for a bit. Not a lot happened in this fight. This fight's pretty inconsequential. I mean, the producers, not producers, Kenny and Chris said that this is an exhibition fight, which kind of contradicts the fact when they said that alternates have a chance of getting in the bracket. Do I think Dragon King has a possibility of getting into the bracket? Jury's out. We need to see more on it, but it's good to see the original Red Devil design come back. Even though it's through, like, a different party, I'm glad to see it back. And, not much can be said. All I'm gonna say is next year, if you bring Doomba back, you gotta work something out with Pokemon BattleBots. That's all I'm gonna say. I want the Pikachu blade. I want the freaking Pikachu blade so badly. Is it because I am a giant Pokemon fan? Absolutely. I have a Pikachu VMAX card displayed on my, like, setup. And, like, I want it so bad. I want the Pikachu blade in BattleBots because it's funny. And yeah. But, we're going to leave it there. There might be a chance that a alternate makes in, but, like, that's a 2% chance or something like that. Moving on to the Midway Major. Viper and Hypershock. Now, going into this fight, this is this is a must-win fight for Mr. Bill Wales and Hypershock. A must-win game for Will Bells and Hypershock. Going into this, like, you have a 2-1 record, but, like, you have a strong strength of schedule. And I think when BattleBots was making the regular season fights, they were like, oh, we'll give it Claw Viper, and it'll be like a breather for them. It'll be a breather for them. That's not what happened at all. Because I don't think anybody expected Claw Viper to go 3-0 heading into this fight. And, I think this was this was the first like challenge fight for Claw Viper. There was, for me at least, there were some concerns about reliability. I mean, definitely in the overhaul fight, you could definitely see Claw Viper slow down during the fight, especially at the end. And I'm like, okay, reliability isn't there. And in my mind, I'm like, the only robots that can beat Claw Viper are robots that are agile enough to get away from Claw Viper or have the potential to outpace it. Because if Claw Viper gets hit a couple times, like from a vertical robot, like any robot that gets hit like once or twice from a vertical robot has to take time to like reorient itself and like flip itself back on its like how it's supposed to drive and everything like that. And you look at robots that could outpace them. There's not a lot that could. You obviously the first one that comes to mind is Hypershock. I just feel like with how the weapon is, endgame could potentially. Riptide's aggressive enough where it could be, but like not a lot of regular robots down here you could say could outpace Claw Viper, like Claw Viper's speed. But the one I had the most confidence would be Hypershock. Powerful weapon. We've seen that. We've seen it has a powerful weapon against Whiplash. Gigabyte. We've seen this. We've seen it freaking fast. We've seen it go really fast across the battle box. I mean, Claw Viper's still faster, but I picked Hypershock because I just thought that this might just end up being the perfect storm to where Claw Viper couldn't handle it with speed and power and everything that Claw Viper would lose. And I was right. I didn't think, though, of how much of a bloodbath it was going to be. It was astronomical how much of a bloodbath it was. Hypershock got one hit in, and then Claw Viper didn't have the time to breathe. They didn't have the chance to breathe whatsoever. Like, it was just, okay, you whiffed on the box rush because we moved slightly to the left. Now we're going to punish you. Blah, 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 blah. And now you're done. And now you're done, and you're dead, and we beat the unbeatable robot pace-wise. We outpaced the robot that was outpacing everyone else. And, part of me wonders if this fight goes differently if Claw Viper doesn't whiff on the box rush. Because that gave Hypershock the opportunity to get under Claw Viper and start getting hits in. And stuff started flying off. It was brutal. And, it does make me feel a little cautious about Claw Viper because we hadn't seen it take a bunch of hits back to back to back to back to back. Does it still run? Can it still run? In previous seasons, fights where it kept on getting big hits, they couldn't sustain those hits and survive. And I'm going into the tournament, I do feel a lot less good about Claw Viper because just a control bot by itself, like by nature, you need to take those big hits to control the robot. Sometimes you have to do that to stop the weapon. If you can't get to the sides, you have to stop the weapon in some way and just drive into it. So I am a little less optimistic about Claw Viper than I was before. For when it comes to rankings, let's start off with Hypershock. I'm giving Hypershock the lock, and I feel like this is going to end up being Hypershock's going to end up being the best ranked 2-2 robot. I think that's what's going to end up happening. I like you beat a Claw Viper and you beat Whiplash, two very good robots. Lost to Endgame, lost to Sawblaze isn't terrible. This very well could easily be the best ranked 2-2 robot. As for placement, placement's gonna reflect that, I believe. For now, I'm gonna have it at 17 or 16, something like that. And I do think that's that range where it goes. I think it's going to end up in a range of like probably like 13 to 19. That's a little bit of a weird range, but that's a favorable range for it. As for Claw of Viper, you know, you still look at like its run, like its 3-0 run. It's solid, dude. It is strong. It is very strong. I'm going to... Do I put it under Lockjaw or above Lockjaw? That's my question. Which regular season felt more impressive? And I do think that was Mr. Claw Viper. Claw Viper, what were you before? You were 7. You go down to 11. My favorite gas station, 7-Eleven. That's not true. Sheetz is better. Moving on to free shipping, Big Deal. This fight was fun. This fight was classic Gary Jin getting its teeth kicked in, and I enjoyed it. And you know, every single fight that we see this horizontal spinner from Big Deal, I continue to get more impressed every single time it fights. It's such a tiny spinner, you don't expect it to do a bunch of damage. Plus the control that it potentially has, like this was great. Big Deal finally got the win that it was looking for, and there's a lot that I could talk about this fight, but like most of it was just dominated by Big Deal, honestly. A lot of it was just Big Deal controlling free shipping and throwing free shipping in the air. Like that one big flip it had, I did not expect like that much power. Like, I mean, we've seen it before against Scorpius and Mad Catter. I shouldn't be surprised, and yet I was anyways. But I think there is a very, like, honestly, right now, Big Deal's the most favorable 3-in-1 robot to make it into the tournament, make it into the bracket. It's crazy to say that and to think that, but it definitely could get into it because, you know, you look at two of these fights, Hijinks and Scorpios, it died, but it was controlling the fight. There is something behind controlling a fight, even though you lost, that you can say, okay, yes, you did lose, but that loss was like pretty, like you lost because you died, not because you like got destroyed or the other robot was doing a bunch of damage to you. Because admittedly, Scorpio's fight wasn't. You lose to a Mad Catter fight where it was a very back and forth fight, and you know, all in all, it was a great fight. Back to that first one, I just thought of this. Cobalt, Minotaur. Cobalt lost that because because Minotaur mounted the comeback. But it controlled most of the fight, and a lot of people view Cobalt highly as well. And I feel like people should be thinking of Big Deal more highly. This definitely could make it into the tournament. This could be a dark horse or a Cinderella story in the tournament, just because of the fact reliability is a little bit of an issue for me just because of those first two fights, but it looked like they fixed it to a certain degree, to a certain extent. They fixed it. Granted, free shipping doesn't have a huge weapon, but it does look like they fixed it, which is good for us. Good for them when it comes to making it in. This might be a little crazy. I'm gonna put it, it's gonna be my 32 spot for now. There's a lot of question marks with the rest of these 1-in-3, 0-in-3 robots. Emulsifier, you know, can it, well, I mean, first of all, can it be quantum, and can it be consistent enough to get damage in and not die like it did in Malice? Or fusion, like, and take enough hits where it can last a fight. Hijinks, can it be reliable? Valkyrie, can Lucy do get over the rookie captain skills and get a win over Glitch, become 2-2? Mammoth, can it beat Kraken like convincingly enough, because you know Kraken isn't a great robot to begin with. Ribot, can it beat Scorpios convincingly enough to even be considered, but like even be considered about making it? Ominous, can Ominous beat Shatter? This can go on. Banshee probably won't win to Blip. Horizon Triton might end up being a fight that puts them into the tournament, but like there's still a lot of questions in my mind about them. And don't doubt me, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of questions in my mind about Big Dill, but so far I am impressed with what Big Dill has done. So currently it's sitting at the number 32 spot. I might be eating my words later. Emulsifier could just like destroy Quantum and surprise us all or something like that, and all these robots could just vastly improve in their last fight, and I'll be eating my words when I say that, and I'll gladly eat my words. I love to be proven wrong. So and that's where we're at with the fight with Big Dill. When it comes to free shipping, I mean, I do think it's in gruff tier of I do think it is out of the tournament, because the one thing that 1 in 3 robots have to have going for it is staying competitive in the fights that you lose. And while they were able to drive around a lot against Hydra and Minotaur, like, but they weren't being competitive. They were just driving around so they couldn't die. But that's where we are at with this one. Moving on to Triton versus Lucky. And a lot of the storyline, I feel like, at least at the beginning, was Lucky running the... Did I say Lucky versus Hydra? Lucky versus Shredded, bro. Well, whatever. But I feel like a lot of the initial thing around this fight was Lucky going in with an interesting configuration. I didn't realize that those forks weren't a part of the flipper. I thought they were part of the flipper, and I was just like, oh, the flipper's not getting a bunch of damage in. And he's not firing Shred It Bro when it's on the little forks. Why isn't it doing that? It took me till the replays for me to realize that it was not a part of the flipper and a part of the wedge. But, you know, it's for their fight with Cobalt, which, you know, that isn't a terrible strategy, trying to keep it up at bay, trying to, like, high center it, and then, like, punch it. I don't think it'll be enough to beat Cobalt, and I genuinely don't think it would be. But Lucky is 3-0. And I don't think anyone expected them to go 2-1. I don't think they expected anyone, Shred It Bro, to beat them, especially since Shred It Bro has had a lot of problems surrounding just the bot working. The bot hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. There's a lot of things that are wrong with Shred It Bro. Mainly that it's thin enough to fit into the screws and get counted out. I mean, I don't think that's a character flaw. I don't think that's a building flaw in any way, shape, or form. But it might, like, this is the death knell for Shred It Bro. Like, if somehow, I don't think it has a shot in making the tournament. If it somehow be Lucky, then maybe. But the weapon didn't work at all, you know. I hate being so pessimistic when it comes to talking about a robot, but it really isn't working well. It isn't working well at all, and I do feel like this is Evan Arias' last year in BattleBots. You know, it's kind of bittersweet because like he's been trying for years for his robots to work, and it hasn't gone well for him. As for, I did put a lock on Lucky. 3-0. I mean, whatever happens with Cobalt, it's gonna make it in. As for the ranking, I do feel like it's still being gatekept by robots that have had a harder fight or a harder opponent than this one. Because Trident isn't a hard opponent, neither is Kraken, neither is Shred It Bro. Ripperoni, even though it has a worse record, beat Endgame. You know, Bloodsport, even though it lost to Cobalt or Copperhead and then the Beat Rotator, those are better opponents than, honestly, all these robots combined. And I feel like that's what's holding me back from putting it any higher, even though it is undefeated. It's going to... It may just end up being the lowest ranked 3-1, but I do think that now it is. It might just end up... It's going to be one of those fringe top 16s. I can see it be like 14 to 19, 14 to 20, but that's the range I'll put it at. Shredded Bro, I think I had them at 47, and they're going to stay at 47. There's not much it can do. Going now to the main event. And this was a heartbreaker. I really wanted Sawblaze to win. Not because I dislike Hydra. I do think Hydra itself is a really good robot. And that's what kills me. Why does it kill me, you ask? Well, I genuinely think that Hydra fans are the Cowboys fans of BattleBots. Like, that's what they are. That's, like, you can't tell me anything else. Am I an Eagles fan? Hell yeah. Go Birds. But like, this was ultimately a good win for Hydra. As soon as I saw, like, that middle fork bend up, I was like, this is over for Sawblaze. I really did think Sawblaze had a chance, because I'm like, okay, I definitely think that Sawblaze could get lower than Hydra. And I thought wrong. This was definitely a very dominant win for Hydra. And I mean, I can't fault Hydra for being dominant. I can't fault him for that. I mean, Hydra is like the best flipper. Best flipper in modern BattleBots, over Bronco, over Blip. Like, it's not even a question. You could be contrarian and say those other robots are better. You are actively wrong. You are, what's the word I'm thinking of? Objectively wrong. You are objectively wrong for thinking that. Because, like it is consistently, like, Rotator is like a really highly thought of robot. It beat Rotator. It beat Sawblaze. Previous seasons, it has beaten these really touted robots. It's beaten Witch Doctor. It's beaten huge, but we don't talk about that win. But still, like, it consistently performs the way it should. And I can't fault Hydra for that. Sawblaze, it's very sad to see Sawblaze lose like this, because I do really, really love Sawblaze. I love Sawblaze so much. Love the black and green design. Wow, it's almost like he's an Eagles fan or something. Love their design. Hammer saws are unique. No, it's hard to have a good hammer style robot, and Sawblaze does it. I mean, it kills me, but that's where we are at. When it comes to rankings, I'm gonna move both of these. Gonna move Huge and Quantum up, and then we'll have Hydra at 7 for now. That's definitely gonna change. It's probably ultimately Sawblaze is top 10 when it comes to a spot. When it comes to the tournament, Hydra's gonna end up being like top 5. That's where we are. I don't think it's gonna land in the top 4. I feel like that's gonna end up being Minotaur or Witch Doctor, whoever wins that one. Riptide, Quantum if it beats Emulsifier, Copperhead if it beats Ripperoni. That's where I think we are. There's a potential that Huge makes it in, but like Hydra or Endgame probably end up being the first two that you think of when it comes to like, oh, we need a 3-in-1 robot that gets the fourth seed. Like, that's probably where it's going to end up. And yes, so let's go through our locks. We have the top 17 with locks being Minotaur, Riptide, Witch Doctor, Copperhead, Huge at 5, Quantum, Hydra, Sawblaze, Cobalt, Endgame, Claw Viper, Lockjaw, Black Dragon, Bloodsport, Ripperoni, Lucky, and Hypershock. Going down past 18 and 19. 2 and 2 Mad Catter will make it in. Malice has locked it in at the 22 spot with a 3 and 1 record. And Jackpot. Actually, that shouldn't be on Tantrum. That should be on Jackpot. So now, when it comes to, there is 20 locked robots, 13 left. Now, we could just talk about who I think could possibly make it in. Definitely, Beta has a great shot. Beta is borderline lock, but I would want it to win against Bloodsport to do that. Same thing with Death Roll is borderline lock. Scorpios to feel less highly upon. Blip, like, all these 1 and 2 robots I would like to hold off on saying that they're lock quite yet. But these other robots I'm confident that they're gonna win. They're gonna stay in to the tournament. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to the BBBN podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.